What is going on, my broskies? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And in today's video, we're going to take a little bit more of a deeper dive into Jewelry Bonnie. We are still awaiting the data download here on Treasure Cruise, man. Really excited to see what they bring with the data download. Obviously, we're going to see a bit more information in regards to these characters, the new batch Rev recruits that are going to debut with this batch, hopefully giving more support to Saturn, and potentially some upgrades for some free-to-play units. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff that we can look forward to. So, let's go ahead and talk about Bonnie once again. We're gonna do a little bit of a deeper dive, compare and contrast with another character that came out recently that can actually synergize really well with this unit. And even if that is the case, is that character even still worth using? Well, we'll discuss all of that as we get into the video today. So, once again, we're going to be using the website to talk about Bonnie, as if I can get the scaling right. There we go. So, Bonnie being a Psy/a striker, personally speaking, I think that's a terrible decision for this unit. I would have preferred if this character was cerebral in some sense. But I think that the fact that she is Slasher Striker, it is good in some aspects, but it's also bad in others. The fact that she is Slasher does work really well with the first batch of characters with Bartholomew and also Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, and also the new Nami too. This character has great synergy with the anniversary Nami, but the fact that she doesn't have Cerebral can kind of ruin a couple of other synergies that she could have possibly had with other characters. I think it's a bit of a weird choice, but either way. Another thing that I just want to get off the bat straight up is the fact that she doesn't have a super tandem. I also think is a pretty big missed opportunity. One of the things in this celebration that we've seen is obviously these new super tandem boost mechanics, and the fact that we have Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. We have the Borsalino, these characters that have these super tandem boosts, but these characters actually don't have a lot of characters that they can use on their team that can actually activate the super tandem boost. Like, if you're in a super boss scenario and you're trying to reach those high damage potentials, the only realistic way you can do it with Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji is if you use the anniversary Nami with Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. That's pretty much the only effective way to do it. You could technically use Law and Kid, I guess, if you're running like Mono Sai kind of team. You could technically use Super Sugo Nami, but she's not really super optimal against that fight, so, you know, it's a bit of a weird situation, honestly. And the thing is the way that Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji activate the Super Tandem boost, if I remember correctly, you need, I think it's either an Egghead unit, I think a Straw Hat Pirate, a Mythical Zoan type character, and I think Paramecia or Worst Generation, I think it's Worst Gen. Worst Gen can activate the Super Tandem boost on Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. So this would have been a perfect opportunity to have a new Super Tandem character that you could potentially pull to work with Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. They didn't opt to do that. This character has a final tap, and arguably has one of the worst final taps that we have seen ever. This final tap is so bad. I guess we should just get it out of the way because it is so goddamn awful. So you just reach a final stage and you activate it, so easily activatable is good. I mean, the fact that they changed their own slot to recovery, ignoring the inability to change super block, like, yes, I guess that is pretty cool, but, like, let's be real, this is not that valuable. It's like, whatever. And then you get the 500 base attack, which can stack with other effects from special. Like, okay, 500 base attack, that's fantastic. If I'm getting a character to level 5 just for this, like, bro, that is awful, because this is extremely redundant in my eyes, because how many situations are you going to be having where the enemy has defense down, right? And you are going to go ahead and final tap with Bonnie. And remember, it's the final tap. Only Bonnie gets access to this. So it essentially gives her a 2.5 damage boost on the final tap, which is fine. The issue is it's a conditional boost, which you can activate on some other special on your crew to actually get this for your whole team. I just don't like final taps that, number one, are solely based around base attack, and then number two, effects that give you a conditional boost which you can activate through other means with other specials on your crew. This just is really bad design. I absolutely despise every fiber of my being is against this final tap. It is so bad. Let's get into something interesting with this character though. Let's move on and to some more positive things. Let's have a look at this special because there's a really interesting synergy that I wanted to point out to you guys. So the special ability, the fact that it is a damage dealing special, massive tick, because the characters in part 1 of the celebration didn't do any damage with their specials, and it actually kind of hurts the unit because there are some key supports that you could have attached to Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, or Kizaru, but you can't do it because they don't do damage with their special. This character does, which is great. It reduces enemies' damage threshold by 7 turns, phenomenal utility there. It then changes the attack multiplier of Psi Recovery Tandem similar to 3x when they match, which is really good, and it lasts for 3 turns too, so you could potentially use it to avoid enemy gimmicks moving into a stage, getting around their preemptive attacks. That's a really powerful effect to have. It will further increase your attack boost by 1.25 times. Again, this is another like valuable unit, like just kind of like a supporter style unit. A character that's not going to be the sole reason why your team does crazy damage, but some like just a bunch of interesting abilities in one special is pretty valuable. So being able to just apply an extremely strong attack boost and then multiply that attack by 1.25 times. Like let's just grab Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji for example. Like I think their attack boost is 3.5, right? But then if you have them as a captain and you have the right tags on your crew, you get a further passive 1.25 or 0.25 increase. So I think it's like 3.75. And then if you use Bonnie's special ability, you can multiply that to become a 4.68. That's kind of strong. It's pretty strong, right? Again, that's just one example. And then it says, this is the interesting part, where if you have 4 or more Egghead, Worst Gen, or Paramecia on the crew, activating a special further boosts crew's chain multiplier effects by 1.0 and boost the chain multiplier by 1.6 for 3 turns. And then it says up to 2 chain multiplier increasing effects can be applied. So this is interesting, where you can use this special ability to basically get a really high chain boost. Activating a special will further boost the crew's chain multiplier effects by plus 0.1 and then also boost the chain by 1.6. So the reason why this is interesting is because right before the anniversary celebration, we had the release of this character right here, which is the Legend Bartholomew Kuma. This guy is a Psi Cerebral powerhouse, and this was kind of the reasoning that I mentioned earlier, the fact that Bonnie wasn't cerebral, so there's a little bit of a lack of synergy between these two characters. But still, having a look at this guy's special ability, near the bottom where you've got the tags, where it says if you have 4 or more Paramecia, Egghead, or Revolutionary Army character, it will further increase your chain additions by pluses 1.0 and then further boost the chain multiplier by 1.6 for 3 turns. So what you can do is you can activate both of these specials at the same time to get an essentially massive chain multiplier boosting effect. Because you have Bonnie that allows you to grant multiple stacks onto your chain, and then you've got Kuma, which can provide really good chain buffs. You've got Bonnie that can provide really good chain buffs. You see where I'm going with here. The interesting thing here is that the special ability here, where they talk about the tags, is almost identical, really. The only real difference is that for Kuma, you need Paramecia, Egghead, Revs, but for Bonnie, it's Egghead, Paramecia, and Worst Generation. So, slight difference there. Instead of Rev Army, you just need Worst Gen for Bonnie, so a slight difference, but the fact that both of these characters fulfill the Egghead and the Paramecia condition, if you do opt to use them together, then there is that, of course. So, that's an interesting component between these two units. One thing I also should probably mention about this as well is you have a look at the Kuma support effect. It attaches to Jewelry Bonnie, and it says that if the character uses a special, it further increases your chain additive multiplier boost by 0.7 and removes 2 turns of despair. Very powerful effect, and obviously perfect synergy with the new Legend Bonnie that has just come out, which allows you to get a chain boosting effect when you launch the special. This can buff it, and then also you get the despair reduction. If we have a look now, go back to Bonnie. When you have a look at Bonnie's support effect, it attaches to Bartholomew Kuma once per quest if you use a special of Kuma. Further boost the chain multiplier by 0.7 and then reduce damage threshold by 3 turns. Again, very similar. If you end up using Kuma on your team, you can have this Bonnie as a support on that Kuma. You buff the chain, and then of course you get the threshold removal, which is quite good. So they can work really well together on the same team, or they can support each other on different teams, and that can work really well too. So I like that aspect of it. That's kind of neat, but at the end of the day, it's just chain addition stuff, so you do have to keep that in mind. Like, it's not the craziest buffs we've ever seen, so do keep that in mind. The captain ability of Bonnie is... I'm not really the biggest fan of it. It gives cooldown, which is fine. Slasher Striker boosting 5.25, 1.25 times recovery, which is kind of neat. You get matching slots for the Slasher and Striker. The burn removal, which is honestly not a great utility effect. Usually if it's burn plus something else, it's pretty good. But the fact that it's like mainly just focused around burn removal in the utility aspect is a little annoying, honestly. Like, I wish it was just more than that. And then you've got the character tag effects, where if you got 4 or more Egghead, further boost Slasher Striker by more, 1.1. And then if you got 5 or more Egghead, Worst Gen, or Paramecia, reduces Special Reverse by 2 turns. I really wish that it was like 10 turn removal of Special Reverse, and then this was the burn removal. If they flipped that around, that would have been phenomenal. But it's okay, you know. It could be worse, right? It could be worse. There's not really too many reasons to use this character as a captain. But if you do opt to use him as a captain, you do get access to the super type effect. Very easily activatable, which I do like. You just need Kuma, one of the Straw Hats, or one of the Vegapunks, or Sabo. So very easily activatable effect. You get Super Sai, all slots changed into Tandem. Bonnie gets a recovery slot, and then boost the color affinity for the crew 2.5 times for 3 turns. Now this one is not overrideable, but still having a 2.5 affinity for 3 turns is actually pretty strong. That's an incredible effect. This actually reminds me a lot of the Summertime Boa Hancock. Let me bring her up real quick because the very similar kind of effect here. So this Boa Hancock super type, with her ability, it would allow you to change all slots into Psy slots, inflict the love status, which is like whatever, but then you get the 2.5 times attack boost for 3 turns. So it's very similar kind of effect where, you know, you get a full board of slots and then you get a really nice buff 2.5 times for 3 turns. Really cool ability there. And then you've got the Rumble stuff, which I guess a lot of people have already kind of trying to like build teams around this character because this character seems pretty decent in Rumble. They've been giving a lot of these characters these abilities where you have the ability to target 2 enemies for the 20% delay. And already the synergies are coming through where you could potentially use this character with the Anniversary 3 Sword Style Nami that debuted in part 1 of the celebration. Having that character and this character on the same team is kind of disgusting. You also had the release of the Nico Robin in the Kazuna Clash Sugo Fest, which also brought very similar abilities. And then if there's any world government characters on the enemy side of the field, she just targets them for a decent amount of damage, which is kind of interesting. The Rumble ability here giving HP and speed up, and then if 6 or more strikers, you get the attack down and the defense down level 5 to all enemies. That's a very good ability, but having to build around 6 striker characters is pretty rough. You also get further defense down to world government. So in terms of building teams in a Rumble sense with this character, like I feel like if you are building a striker team, you probably, if hypothetically you wanted to build a team with this character on it. I don't know why. I don't think this character is the best character in the game. Like, I don't think you would go out of your way to try and put this character on your squad. This character is a 55 cost character in Rumble, which is the real downside. So there is that. But you could potentially use this with the Anniversary Nami that came out in part 1. I do think that's a great combo. That Anniversary Nami is very strong and can actually be put on a lot of different teams. But if you are building like with this, and same with Saint Saturn, they really want to be building around the striker class. And Striker have always really had a kind of a rough time building great, solid teams. I think like the best Striker team that I remember there ever being was like kind of like a health cut meme team with characters like Guild Tesoro, which would give you a ton of special CT, and then you'd have massive health cut characters like version 1 Whitebeard, and then you'd have Legend Jack, and then you would rely on mass amounts of fixed damage or wave clearing aspects such as like V1 Roger, Luffy and Yamato, just to kind of like wave clear all of the enemies once their HP is low via the health cuts. So I guess that kind of, that's a very interesting way of going about it, but I feel like now that we have interesting utility characters like this Bonnie, like 3 Sword Style Nami, that can delay the enemy specials from launching, meaning that you could kind of pivot to a more, I guess, typical team scenario where you actually are doing damage or, you know, debuffing the enemy so that you can actually do damage against them. I guess one aspect of the special here that we forgot to mention in her kit is that she targets 2 high attack enemies for halving attack. She halves defense of 2 high defense enemies and then halves the speed of 2 high speed characters. So this can enable your team to nerf the opponent to allow your team to shine, right? So the high attack characters on the enemy side of the field, they do less damage. You can do more damage to the high defense characters, and you're just slowing down their speedy characters. Very interesting kit. I don't think this character is going to be an optimal choice for like striker teams moving forward. She is a slasher unit though. Is she going to see play in a slasher team? Probably not. I feel like if I was building a slasher team, I would probably still focus around using 3 Sword Style Nami, but it is what it is. But that's all I wanted to bring you guys a little bit attention to today in regards to Jewelry Bonnie and the really interesting synergies between her, Bartholomew, and Kuma. Like, it makes sense why they've done what they have done. And I guess at this point, we're just looking forward to the data download for this batch. Really excited to see what they bring along with this celebration. And then, of course, the next thing to look forward to is going to be Part 3. We don't really know what they could do for Part 3. We have some ideas about what it could be, But I guess we'll have to wait and see, right? Anyways, by the way, guys, we are almost at 90,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So if you had not subscribed, I would highly advise doing that. Make sure to go ahead and do that. Thank you very much for watching the video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and if you did enjoy it, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.